The fjord breathes cold and gray before the market stirs. In the blue half-light of a Norse morning, Ulfar Sigurdsson prepares his scales. Brass pans worn smooth by 10,000 transactions, a balance arm rubbed bright as a blade. He sets each carved lead weight with a reverence other men reserve for prayer. Around him, Kaupang slowly wakes. The reek of tallow, the low percussion of rope and hull, voices bargaining in 6 tongues. Ulfar hears none of it. His world is smaller. A pan, a weight, a fragment of hacked silver trembling at the point of truth. For 30 years he has read metal the way priests read scripture. Silver does not lie. It cannot flatter, cannot fear, cannot be bought. But the men who carry it, that is another matter entirely. The young trader's hands betray him before his eyes do. Fingers moving too quickly across the counter, offering cut silver fragments with the rehearsed confidence of a man performing calm rather than feeling it. Ulfar weighs the pieces without ceremony. The balance arm settles. Not dramatically, not accusingly, merely a hair's breadth wrong, a whisper of difference only a man who has weighed 10,000 transactions could name. The silver is too bright besides, catching the amber lamplight with a luster that speaks of lead beneath, not the honest gray of arabesque dirhams or English pennies worn honest by 100 hands. Ulfar completes the trade, his face a carved thing, his merchant's courtesy absolute. One small fragment disappears into his leather pouch. That night, holding it to the fire, he begins to understand that someone, somewhere, is building something that must not be seen. Alone now, by the low amber glow of a clay lamp, Ulfar works in silence. He places the suspect hack silver into a shallow bone ash cupel and coaxes the charcoal brazier to temperature with a leather bellows. The workshop fills with the acrid bite of heated metal. He watches. He waits. A man who has weighed 10,000 transactions knows what honest silver does in fire, how it drinks the heat, how it shines back clean. This does not. Beneath the flame, the surface blooms a sickly greenish hue, the unmistakable blush of copper betraying itself. The shell of purity was just that, a shell. Someone has committed enormous craft to an enormous lie. Ulfar sets down his tools with the careful deliberateness of a man controlling something vast inside himself. The silver is rotten. And somewhere in Kaupang, so is the man who made it. The long fire burns low in Jarl Orm's hall, its smoke coiling through rafters hung with shields and the pelts of winter wolves. Ulfar enters, carrying his scales like a priest bearing relics. Careful, deliberate, eyes already reading the room. Sworn men line the mead benches. Their stillness is not peace, it is the stillness of drawn breath before a blade falls. The silver is brought forward in linen-wrapped bricks, enormous in quantity, conspicuous in its brightness. Too bright, Ulfar notes, the way a scar is too smooth. He sets his weights with practiced ritual, fingers brushing each piece as though in prayer. Then, almost casually, he calls for the acid stone and the testing needle. A silence moves through the hall like cold water. Orm's eyes find Ulfar's, and what passes between them is not yet accusation, but it is no longer ignorance. In the shadow of half-built longships, where the air reeks of pine tar and salt rot, the young merchant Halvard finds Ulfar at last. He is trembling, not from the bitter Vestfold wind, but from something deeper, something that has been eating at him like rust-consuming iron. The confession spills out in broken fragments. Orm's men came in the night, the debased silver pressed into his hands like a curse he could not refuse. A war fleet. Dozens of keels laid in secret inlets along the fjord. A challenge to Harald Hardrada himself. The Hammer of the North. A king who destroys his enemies without hesitation or mercy. Ulfar listens, his scarred hands still, his eyes hard as tempered steel. He now holds the most dangerous thing in all of Kaupang, the truth. The mead hall reeks of tallow, smoke, and sweat. 12 merchants crowd the long table. Men who have staked fortunes on the reliability of silver, on the sanctity of weight and measure. Ulfar lays his evidence before them. The shaved hack silver, the telltale streak of copper beneath a blade's edge, a careful ledger of transactions traced back to the Jarl's own steward. The silence that follows is not contemplation. It is calculation. Some faces harden with fury. Others go carefully, deliberately blank. To expose the deception risks shattering the fragile trust that holds Kaupang's entire commerce together. Every deal, every voyage, every sworn oath of honest measure. Ulfar stands alone at the table's head, the scales around his neck suddenly feeling less like a tool and more like a noose. The council's verdict will determine whether justice or survival wins the night. They come before dawn. 3 men, iron-belted, moving without torchlight through Kaupang's frozen mud streets. Orm's creatures, fluent in silence and sudden violence. Ulfar hears them first. The creak of the gatepost. The soft crush of boots on frost-hardened earth. In the darkness of his weighing house, surrounded by the smell of tallow smoke and cold metal, he makes his choice in a single breath. The scales go into linen. The shaved coins, the evidence of Orm's deception, pressed against his chest beneath his cloak. He slips through the back passage as the door buckles behind him, emerging into the black bite of the fjord wind. Fleeing a powerful Jarl in the Viking Age is its own confession of guilt. And Ulfar knows it. What he carries now must speak louder than his fear. The tax collector's hall smells of tallow and old parchment, of authority rendered in ink and iron. Ulfar lays his evidence before the king's man with the deliberate calm of someone who has spent a lifetime weighing invisible things: trust, risk, consequence. The shaved hack silver, the falsified ingots, the ledger of a Jarl's quiet ambition. He does not appeal to honor or the old merchant code. He speaks instead in the only language crowns reliably hear: lost revenue, weakened tithe, a kingdom's credibility measured in corrupted metal. The collector's fingers move across the samples, slow and precise. A long silence fills the room like smoke. Ulfar has placed everything he owns, his livelihood, his name, perhaps his life, upon these scales. What the king's man does next will determine whether justice or vengeance comes first. The boatyard burns with torchlight as royal huscarls flood the frozen shore, their iron-rimmed shields catching the winter dawn. Orm Jarl stands among his half-finished warships, like a man suddenly aware he is built of hollow wood. Ulfar steps forward, not with sword, not with anger, but with a worn leather ledger and a lifetime of measured certainty. Every shaved coin, every fraudulent ingot, every false weight, catalogued, dated, witnessed. The evidence is immovable. Orm blusters, then bargains, his silver tongue as debased as his silver. But Ulfar's scales have always found the truth buried inside the lie. The assembly of merchants watches in silence as the most powerful man in Vestfold is weighed against his own corruption and found wanting. Now the question that hangs over the frozen fjord: who else has profited from Orm's deception? Kaupang breathes again. Slowly, like a man who has survived a wound he did not expect to survive. The stalls fill once more with amber and walrus ivory, with furs reeking of the northern dark, with the clean ring of honest iron. No feast is held for Ulfar Sigurdsson. No skald composes verses in his name. That is not the merchant way. Instead, men simply seek him out, pressing their hacksilver into his weathered hands with quiet, absolute faith. He weighs each piece with the same unhurried care, the beam settling to its perfect stillness. He understands now what the old gods perhaps never could, that in a world where kingdoms fracture and beliefs erode like coastal stone, an honest weight is the one truth all men, Norse, Christian, Frankish, Russ, will kneel before equally. But the Jarl's war fleet still rides at anchor somewhere in the outer fjords, waiting.